Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Film Room Podcast. This is episode 22. I'm your host, Joe Baress, along with my co-host, Joby Fawcett. Joby, how's it going?
Going quite well, Joe. I hope you had an enjoyable weekend up to, but not including the outcome of the Green Bay Packers-Philadelphia Eagles playoff game. I know that was quite a disappointment for you, but other than that, I hope you enjoyed your 2 days to kind of recharge the battery, Joe.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that game later. It was not great, but it was great to plenty of people in this area. So Joby, we're looking at right now, we're recording this. It's Monday afternoon. So Joby, you've got a big game tonight against the Vikings. So it's a big weekend, big weekend for the both of us. I already failed, so hopefully you don't.
Yeah, Joe, listen, we'll see how things go out on Monday night for the Los Angeles Rams, my favorite NFL team. But, of course, first and foremost, the thoughts and prayers are always going to go out to all the people of Los Angeles who've gone through a really horrific 10-day stretch here. And a lot of people lost a lot of their memories and their livelihoods and their homes. And hopefully the Rams can find some solace in playing a decent football game tonight for those people who can watch and give them something to shout and be happy for in what has been a very terrifying couple of days out there on the West Coast.
Just absolutely treacherous. So thoughts and prayers go out to everyone in Los Angeles dealing with the wildfires. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a little joy out there, have a Rams victory. So I'll be rooting. Also, I hate the Vikings, so. But,
okay. Strong words, Joe.
But anyway, right now we are joined by our Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, Hannah Howell of Elk Lake Swimming. Hannah, how we doing?
Very good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us. Just to break down why Hannah got the Athlete of the Week award. She won 2 individual events and teamed with 3 of her teammates to win the final relay to lead Elk Lake to a 98-84 win over Scranton Prep. That moved Elk Lake to 4-0 and also ended Scranton Prep's dual meet winning streak at 73. So big week. Hannah, I know you already went over this in your Athlete of the Week interview, but beating a Scranton Prep team that was on such a streak. I mean, how did that feel for you and how did it feel for your team?
For me and our team, of course, it was such a huge accomplishment. They're such a competitive team and they're truly amazing. So to be able to say that we came out on top is just absolutely amazing. We've tried our hardest to get to where we are.
Hannah, you look at the Lackawanna League swimming, and I've been covering it now for, more than a decade. It always seems to be Scranton Prep or Delaware Valley or Abington Heights are the teams that you kind of really are always focused in on. They have some great traditions there. What has helped fuel this growth at Elk Lake over the past couple of seasons here? Last year, you came very close to beating Scranton Prep, and as you mentioned to me, reminded me actually, you beat Abington Heights for the first time in school history last year. So what has been the backbone of building this program?
I'd say the backbone to our program is just such great people and such a great team. We all have such amazing attitudes. And of course, props to our coaches. They're amazing coaches and they're constantly, lifting us up. And even when we don't want to get up at 6:30 in the morning, they're always there with a big smile on their faces. They're greeting us. And it just makes, the program better because sometimes it's not always a physical sport. It's a lot of mental as well because it's hard. It truly is hard to get up at 6:30 and just hold yourself accountable to go and lift. And so I feel like that's a huge thing is that our coaches are just amazing human beings and are just so very supportive and just our team.
Yeah, absolutely. Joby struggles to wake me up by noon. So yeah, getting up at 6:30 is a lot. Hannah, this may be a dumb question and you could tell me if it is. I won't be offended. But, I I used to play basketball, and the preparation for that obviously is just like, you scout the team. This is who you need to guard. This is who you'll be guarding. Here's the preference. Here's what you need to do. When you're preparing for a swim meet against a big time opponent like Scranton Prep, what is the preparation that goes into that? Like, how do you prepare to face like a specific team in swimming?
So me personally is just trying to keep myself very healthy. I said in my interview last night that I was sick the week before, so that was a huge thing. Going into this meet is just trying my best to keep myself healthy, and because I was very, very sick. So that's one thing, is keeping your health up. And as basic training goes, I'd say a lot of yards and fast yards. So before we have a really big meet, we'll do not as much yardage, but more sprint work. And I feel like that's really helped us, especially with like the relays and everything. It's definitely shown how it's helped us.
So Hannah, in the sports world, in some of the more, mainstream sports, where you hear about rivalries and whatnot, how driven was this program at Elk Lake to finally get over the top here this year in terms of beating a Scranton Prep? Last year, there was no diving in the dual meet, but the final score would still indicate that Prep would have edged your team even if there was diving. So how was the motivation all year for your group of teammates for this dual meet?
Our coaches would repetitively say that we have to focus on the bigger meets, so the Abington Heights, the Scranton Preps, and Del Val. So we have Abington Heights coming up, which is a huge meet, so we have to focus up for that. But as far as just like staying focused and everything, I feel like we're pretty good at doing that as a team and whole. Like we know that we have a huge meet coming up, so we focus on that, and that's just always in the back of our heads no matter what.
Absolutely. Hannah, I'm just curious, how did you get started in swimming? How did you get started in the sport?
So I started as a little guppy, which is our younger program. I started when I was about in second grade, so I've been swimming for quite some time. And I actually am lucky enough to say that I had the same coach that coaches me now. So he's kind of worked his way all the way up through my swimming career. And honestly, one of my close friends at the time just told me like, hey, you should come out and just try swimming. And I did, and it clicked immediately. And I just feel like when I dive into the water, it's just everything out of my head just completely clears. And I just feel like I should always be in the pool.
And Hannah, for anyone who hasn't been to a dual meet in that atmosphere and in that setting, it can be extremely intense and exciting and loud. And, you're as a competitor in the water, so sometimes maybe you're not feeling that energy, but I can't imagine what that scene must have been like in that 400 free relay when you as a team at Elk Lake needed that victory. What was it like for you and your teammates in that relay, getting through to the finish and getting that big win to end the winning streak?
So at the time of the relay, we didn't know quite what the score was. So we knew we just had to go out and try our hardest. And there were so many community and like just members and supporters there. It's probably the most we've ever had for a dual meet. And so we just knew like we have to try our best for, the four of each other and just everybody that came here to support us. And again, we didn't know the score. We just knew that we had to give our all. And as long as we gave our all, that's just, everything we could give.
Absolutely. Hannah, I saw that I believe you also play soccer, you play softball. What is it? I feel like that's an interesting transition going from soccer to swimming to softball. What was it kind of like balancing those sports and, kind of transitioning from one to the other?
So I am a big fan of doing sports, so I love being active and just having somewhere to go after school and everything. I mean, it is quite a transition because I will say that you don't get as much, you don't get in shape as much in soccer as if I were to run cross country. But I just felt like soccer was my fun sport and swimming is definitely my competitive sport. And I'd say softball is competitive at times. But going from the transition from soccer into swimming isn't that bad because we do start swimming as my soccer season's going on. So it's not too bad. Like I don't hop right from soccer right into swimming. And then softball afterward is just like again, a fun, a little bit competitive, but I just love being active.
Hannah, let's talk about this remainder of the season that you have. You mentioned being a little bit sick the week before the Scranton Prep meet. And then, of course, I believe you still have, as you mentioned, a very challenging meet with Abingdon Heights coming up. Then you kind of get into the weird period of swim season where you have the Les Richards championships, then a big pause, and then into the district championships. So where are you in your training right now, and how do you feel at this point of the season?
At this point, I feel like we can accomplish a lot more than we have. Although Scranton Prep was a huge meet, I know that our expectations are to do a lot better. So I'm really excited for districts and the championships. And we actually have an Ernie Shartle Invitational this weekend. So that's also a good thing. I feel like between the gaps we'll be perfectly fine because our coaches are very good about planning the right workouts and getting the right yards and tapering correctly and doing drag and all that stuff. So I feel like the gap won't be too much of an impact for us, and hopefully it'll help us a little bit more for districts.
Hannah, I saw that you're going to be going to Lock Haven. Why did you choose Lock Haven?
So when I was looking for colleges to choose, when I reached out to Lock Haven's coach for swimming, he was just he was very kind and open. And when I went to tour Lock Haven, he wanted to talk to me and talk about the swim program. And I thought that was very nice. And overall, he just seems like a great coach. I went to a Lock Haven swim meet, and it's just the way that he coaches is absolutely amazing. The way the team acts around each other and is just, like a great team overall. So I feel like, choosing, I did have other colleges in mind, but when I really narrowed it down, that was just where I saw myself.
And I have to ask because, of course, the Summer Olympic Games were over the summer, and I have to ask for you, do you have a favorite swimmer that you follow or someone who helps inspire you to excel in the sport?
I do, although it seems odd because Michael Phelps is a flyer. He's personally my favorite, not because of what he swims, but of how he is. He has such a great attitude, and he's very, very dedicated to his goals and just constantly doing better. And he's just a great, great person overall.
Absolutely. So Hannah, we touched on it to start the show, but I'm a big Packers fan. I have a share. I have a share. Exactly. I have a share of stock in the team, and I saw that you are an Eagles fan. So did you have a chance to watch the game yesterday? And what'd you think of it?
I'm a huge Eagles fan, and I really think Saquon should have taken it to all the way. But I will say, since you're a Packers fan, I'll keep us humble. But I love the Eagles; they're just amazing. I'm a huge Philly fan, so Phillies, Eagles, I get into all that stuff. And I'm really sorry for your loss.
You're too kind, Hannah. You don't have to be so kind.
You're much too kind. There's no reason to be sorry for Joe, believe me.
Oh my God. So yeah, who are they going to play? Oh, they might play the Rams, Joby, right?
Well, Joe, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
That's true. That's true.
The Rams have to play yet.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. So, Joby, you got anything else for Hannah?
I don't, Hannah, but I do want to congratulate you. I got a chance to meet you last year, and we spoke after the win over Scranton Prep, and you were so elated. And I really was looking forward to having this interview with you because you really have a great personality. I want to wish you and all of your teammates at Elk Lake a lot of luck, and I'll see you coming up here at the Les Richards Championships in a couple of weeks.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Hannah. Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
You too. All right. That was Hannah Howell from Elk Lake. Joby, I mean, that's just, I'm glad we got a swimmer in here, our first swimmer. That'll forever be the Jeopardy question of, who was the first swimming guest on the Film Room podcast. And she was great and way too kind to me, Joby, but that speaks to her. That's it.
That does speak much to her character because, sometimes Philly fans can be a little bit abrupt with those who they have conquered in the immediate past. But yeah, listen, Joe, funny story about swimming, as you know. Several years ago, I can remember being approached by our boss at the time and was asked if I would be interested in picking up the swimming beat. We were having some transitions in the staff at the time, and I said, yeah, in a pinch, I have no problem doing it. I enjoy swimming. You know, it's had the same similarities or characteristics as track and field. So I felt I would pick it up quite quickly. And you may recall, Joe, I've had some real unique experiences as a swimming writer because I've been able to cover such great all-around athletes. Mia Nonnenberg, who had a tryout in the Olympic Games several years ago. She went to the University of Alabama. But I've covered some really outstanding swimmers. Peter Kawash, who won a couple of state championships from Lakeland, didn't even have a swimming program. But for you or anybody else, if you get a chance to really experience swimming in the natatorium, that atmosphere is incredible because it's so enclosed and it's so loud and it echoes off the walls. And I'm telling you, the athletes in support of the person who is swimming is so loud, and that person probably can't hear any of it.
Yeah.
And it's just a great scene. It's always hard to describe, when you're trying to write it for the newspaper or online coverage, but I could only envision what that scene looked like when Elk Lake's girls team won that final relay to win the overall meet. And you know what, too, Joe? On top of that, congratulations to Elk Lake and where the program is now. You have to give a great salute to Scranton Prep's girls program, which has been able to achieve this. Anytime you have a long winning streak like this snapped, you always kind of focus on the team that ended it rather than looking back on what has been an amazing 7 or 8 years of success for the Scranton Prep Classics under the guidance of a couple of coaches, Joe Thier and now Colin Manley, who was extremely gracious in defeat. And, those kids are fantastic swimmers. They won 8, I think, out of the 12 events in the dual meet. It's just Elk Lake had a little bit more depth and won a big relay and won the events it needed and piled up some big points in the diving. And, congratulations to both programs. I like to see that kind of competition in girls swimming. We're going to have some similar bouts here in the boys side of the swimming season as well. And if you had a chance, Joe, you got to look at the Classic Gold relay results from the University of Scranton over the weekend. And I believe Scranton Prep girls and Abington Heights girls were in a very tight matchup there with Delaware Valley and then the Delaware Valley boys and Tunkhannock boys. So we have some really good swimmers out there, and there should be some real good championship meets coming up here in the future.
Absolutely, Joe, man. I'm glad that you said, think about the team that had the streak. I mean, it's what I always think is cool is when, someone breaks a record and on any level and it's an individual record, the person who held the record ends up being there. And, it's kind of a nice moment to look back on what the person before did, their career and everything, and how long they've held the record. So absolutely, congratulations to Scranton Prep for keeping that streak alive for so long.
And Joe, let me just mention, I personally had the opportunity in high school to be on a very successful track and field program at Lakeland under the guidance of Hall of Fame coach Phil Ticelli. And I had gotten into this varsity sport when a long winning streak had already started, and I was a big part of that, the bulk of what ended up being a 51 meet winning streak. And I can also tell you, while it is great to achieve those types of things, and it's great motivation, both individually and as a team, to try to continue and maintain that winning tradition, it does come with a great deal of pressure. And anybody who also competes on the Abington Heights girls track and field team that has won more than 100 meets in a row will tell you there is, in addition to a great responsibility to try to continue that streak going, a little bit of pressure to not be the team that has it end on your watch.
Right. True.
So yeah, again, it's a great job by the Scranton Prep kids, but congratulations to what Elk Lake was able to achieve. A goal that really motivated this group from last year, and they were able to accomplish it last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And congratulations to Hannah Howell, our athlete of the week, which is brought to you by the Lehigh Valley Orthopedic Institute. Joby, we had an interesting week in high school basketball, a little bit of a shakeup to the high school basketball polls.
Joe, this is right around the time of the year we always get this, but go ahead.
Right. No, I was going to say, we had Scranton, in boys, we had Scranton Prep beat Valley View, undefeated and top ranked Valley View. So in the boys, Holy Cross returned to the top of the rankings, followed by Riverside, Scranton. Scranton Prep, I believe, jumped from 9 to 4. Because they also beat Abington Heights, Joby. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. So 2 ranked teams, obviously the top ranked Valley View. Valley View dropped to 5, Old Forge is 6, Red Valley 7, Dunmore 8, Abington Heights 9, and Delaware Valley 10. But like you said, Joby, this is about the time of year where, we're in league play, and we're going to see some interesting battles play out.
Well, Joe, you were a basketball player at Holy Cross, and you logged a lot of minutes, logged a lot of games. And any basketball coach will tell you this time of the year, right around this second week in January, just look at the records. Okay, Valley View won its first 11 games of the season. All right, if you're playing two games a week, that's 5 weeks of season. You've had 2 weeks of preseason, so you're 7 weeks into the season. Okay, is some wear and tear on a lot of these teams, and again, some teams are now just starting to find their footing. Okay, Scranton Prep got a little bit of a late start. A couple of football players there that had to come out for basketball a little bit later than usual. That was certainly also the case with Valley View. You look at what Holy Cross got out to such a great start, had a very challenging non-league schedule, and now is returned back to the number 1 spot. It's kind of a strange situation for poor Valley View, and I don't want to say poor Valley View, but for Valley View, 11-0 to start the season with a victory over Holy Cross.
Yeah.
Suffers its first loss and tumbles all the way to number 5. Not necessarily because of the loss,
no,
but just because of the victories the teams ahead of them haven't been able to accomplish. Because if you do the breakdown, okay, Holy Cross is going to obviously supplant Valley View as number 1, despite Valley View's win over Holy Cross. But Riverside lost to Holy Cross head-to-head. Scranton Prep lost to Scranton head-to-head. Now Valley View has that loss to Scranton Prep head-to-head. So that's how that top 5 kind of gets wiggled around with a little bit, And you see a team like Valley View go from number 1 to number 5 when the gap between those 5 teams is very narrow.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Very narrow. And again, these teams are going to face some really tough opponents moving forward as we go through this league season. Prep and Scranton still have to play for the first time this season. Riverside is playing Old Forge on Monday night, which, if all goes well, I'll be in attendance for that game, that great tri-borough rivalry game. Both teams off to fantastic starts to this year, and right in the battle for that Division II championship. So that should be a real good basketball game. Valley View still has a game against Scranton on the schedule later on. So, yeah, we have a lot of shuffling yet to go. And don't forget, too, Joe, you know this better than anybody. Everybody gets to play division opponents twice.
Yep.
So anything can happen as we move forward. But we're right around the midway point here, Joe. What's the max? 22 games we can play in a season for high school basketball. So we're a little bit past. Some teams have 11. Some teams have 12 games already played. So that's where we're at. And this tends to happen. You try to get these big head-to-head matchups, and we get a loss here and upset there. But good top 10 right there. And again, a lot of these teams playing head-to-head this week.
Exactly. And, moving over to the girls, Scranton Prep had another few impressive victories. There was a 1-versus-2 showdown with Valley View this week. Scranton Prep really handled business there to remain undefeated. So Scranton Prep remains at the top. Valley View is number 2. Dunmore 3, Elk Lake at 4 after beating Mountain View this week or last week. North Pocono ends up moving up to 5. They had a win over Abington Heights to move them from 9 to 5. Abington moved up to 6 because they beat Scranton, and Scranton tumbled to 7. Honesdale is at 8, Mountain View 9, Mid-Valley 10. Joby, it's funny, it gets a little complicated because there's, like you were saying, there's teams that have beaten other teams, but lost to other teams, so the top 10 shuffling gets a little interesting.
It's a little interesting, Joe, but look, let's play it this way. Some very good basketball teams on the girls' side of it. Scranton Prep is head and shoulders above everybody else.
Yeah.
You may have the hard data right in front of you there, but I think not just the victories that Scranton Prep has been able to post over league opponents to this point, but the margin of victories is just off the chart,
Right.
This team is very experienced, very talented, went to the state final in Class 4A last year, and it's going to take a really outstanding effort from a team that has a lot of talent and can handle playoff pressure on a neutral floor to knock Scranton Prep off in Class 4A this year in the state. And I say that with a lot of confidence. I really do. This team is well coached.
Absolutely.
They've played a lot of big basketball games to this point of their careers. Jenna Hillebrand, Bella Denenbaum, Maya Jenkins, these are all state caliber basketball players. Ashlyn Moore has had a lot of game action. Claire McGrath was one of the best defensive players in the Lackawanna League. I mean, this is an extremely talented team. And, the wins speak for themselves. And you looked forward to that 1 versus 2 matchup against Valley View. The two teams played in the District 2 championship game last year, and both clearly Scranton Prep by going to the state final, won a state playoff game. Valley View also won a state basketball playoff game last year in girls basketball. And Scranton Prep just really had an impressive performance against an extremely worthy opponent in Valley View here locally. And so I think that's where you can clearly say that Scranton Prep is head and shoulders above everybody else. Now, after that, what a great job being done in Dunmore. Okay, Carrie Toomey there, coaching that basketball program. 84 straight Lackawanna League victories to that program's credit. And, doing it with, a team that's got a lot of experience, but didn't finish last season, I think, the way that they wanted to. And this team is extremely motivated. Sophia Toludo, a very, very gritty player, a 2-time all-region player. She's going to the University of Scranton next year. She is a terrific floor leader. Amanda Dempsey has emerged as a great complementary player to Sophia Toludo, who gives Dunmore a couple of big weapons there on the offensive end. And they're going to play great defense. Jackie Brown is a really talented player for Dunmore as well. So I'm really impressed with what Dunmore has been able to do so far in Lackawanna Division II. And hey, we just got done speaking with Hannah Howell from Elk Lake Swimming, right?
Yeah. That
program came off a great victory over Scranton Prep. How about the great success that Elk Lake girls basketball has had, Joe?
Absolutely.
This group had to play Mountain View, which we all know the history here in the last 2 seasons with Addison Kilmer, last year's state Class 1A Player of the Year. She led Mountain View to the semifinals in 1A as a freshman, to the finals last year as a sophomore, and now Mountain View is up in Class 2A, and this was the really much anticipated matchup between these two teams in that Lackawanna Division III, and Elk Lake posted a really gritty victory over Mountain View and has now seized first place in that Division III. So really good job there by Elk Lake and Coach Megan Castleberry.
Absolutely. Like you said, Dunmore, Sophia Toludo had 17 points in a win over Mid-Valley. Amanda Dempsey, as you mentioned, also had 17 points in that game. And Jackie Brown, she had 10 points in that game and 21 points earlier in a win over Riverside earlier in the week. Just some other performances of some people you mentioned. Maya Jenkins had 23 points, including 5 3-pointers in that 59-34 win over number 2 Valley View. She had 9 points in a 63-16 win over North Pocono. Jen Hillebrand had 18 points in the win over North Pocono and 16 points, including 4 3-pointers in the win over Valley View. Joby, our last week's guest, Julia McCullen, or as I like to call her, Joila.
Yep.
She had a big week following up her Athlete of the Week performance. She had 34 points, including 8 3-pointers in a win over Lakeland. Those 8 3-pointers set a record that, well, it broke her previous record of 6, but she also shared that with Marissa Hastings and Lauren Carey. So another big week for her. She also had 14 points in Sunday's win over Western Wayne. So another big week for Julia. We also had, Tony Battaglia of Scranton boys basketball. He had 20 points, including 6 3-pointers in a 58-48 win over West Scranton. Also had 11 points in a 62-47 win over Abington Heights. Adam Badurka of Holy Cross, he keeps rolling, had 23 points in a 78-62 win over Mid-Valley. Added 17 points, including 4 3-pointers in a 66-50 victory over Lakeland. Cameron Parker, Wolf Forge, who we've talked about, he had 22 points, including 6 3-pointers in a 62-40 win over Lakeland. Added 16 and 4 3-pointers in a 67-30 victory over Western Wayne. A couple of Scranton Prep kids in a big week for them. Packy Doherty, he had a game-high 15 points when Scranton Prep upset number 1 Valley View 50-36. We also had 22 points in a victory over North Pocono and 15 in a win over Abington Heights. Bryson Martin had the same point total for the week, but he had a game-high 24 points against North Pocono. He had team-high 17 points in a win over Abington Heights, and he had 11 points in that victory over Valley View. So those are just some of the great performances in basketball this week. So anything else to touch on in basketball before we move on, Joby?
Just really quickly, Joe, great job. Scranton and West Scranton boys-girls doubleheader over at Lackawanna College last week. And Scranton boys have taken first place in Lackawanna Division I, which I expect to be an extremely competitive race for that division championship the rest of the way here. I think Scranton Prep is now just starting to get its footing. Yep. The Cavaliers were the preseason favorite in Division I. This is a work in progress for them. They kind of found that to be a bit of a formula that they tried to use last year and got to the semifinals of the state basketball playoffs. This win over Valley View, I think, means a lot in what was it's an extremely intense rivalry between those two programs. They had met in each of the last 2 years in the District 2 Class 4A championship games. So, yeah, I think Division I, there are some real big battles ahead for us moving forward. I think in Division 2, Joe, that Holy Cross has kind of separated itself a little bit with its 2 wins over Riverside and Old Forge in the first round of those battles. We'll have rematches here coming up in the second half, but you mentioned Adam Badurka there from Holy Cross. What great balance the Crusaders have offensively, and I may be wrong on this by just a decimal point or two, but I believe Adam Badurka, Matt Lyons, and Michael Hughes are all averaging more than 14 points per game. There's not one player for Holy Cross who's got 22 or 23 points a game. Those 3 are averaging better than 14 points a game, so that's really outstanding for that group. I do expect Riverside and Old Forge to give Holy Cross a couple of pretty good battles here in the second half of the season, but right now Holy Cross looks very strong. And in Division 3, Joe, here we go again. Elk Lake is in a tie for first place in that division, I believe, with Montrose. Both teams have outstanding offensive firepower. And what a great job by Elk Lake coach John Warnero. He made his return to the bench. You may remember him, Joe. He kind of helped rebuild or rekindle the enthusiasm for the Elk Lake basketball program up there on the boys' side. So it's a great tradition from way back when they were a state title contender back in the mid-'70s, and of course, outstanding basketball up there in the '80s. And John Wanero guided this team to a bunch of championships here in the Lackawanna League, Division IV, and now has back returned to the sidelines, and Elk Lake's in first place there in Division III.
Absolutely, Joby. So moving on to had some pretty, another great week of wrestling, Joby.
So I don't know how you're keeping track of all these big invitational meets.
It's a little bit of searching, on the.
I mean, a lot of very challenging.
Yeah, on flow and all these track wrestling, all these different things. But we did have, let's start there, Joby. And again, I know that we've talked about them, but this going into we're hitting these tournaments now, obviously, where they're where our area big time wrestlers are seeing some of the talent that they may be seeing at a state level. And I thought our guys did spectacular. Obviously, we've said them before. We've had them on the show. Abington Heights' Brian Hurd and West Scranton's Michael Turry. They finished second at the Midwinter Mayhem at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. This is a big time event with big time talent. Schools like Bishop McCourt and just who just beat Wyoming Seminary last week, which is no small feat. So these are the type of top tier wrestlers. Just great experience for these kids. And Brian Hurd, very entertaining finals match. I watched it through PA Power Wrestling. He actually ends up taking an 11-1 lead against Bodie Marlowe, who placed third in the state last season. And, I believe he's going to, was it Pittsburgh? Yeah, he's going to Pitt. He's ranked second in the state right now. I mean, and Brian Hurd raced out to an 11-1 lead. He ends up losing the match, but what an absolute awesome, just awesome start against a absolutely top tier opponent. That's just a good sign for Brian Hurd at this point in the season. I mean, even though he lost, to finish second at this tournament, I believe he had a couple of 2 pins, 2 technical falls, and a major decision to get to that finals match. So that's just, I'd come away with my head held high in that, even though he didn't take home the win. I mean, he gained even more valuable experience and went toe to toe with one of the best kids in the state, which also Brian Hurd is as well. Same thing with Michael Turry. 4 technical falls and a major decision to reach the final. Faced Bishop McCourt's Devin Margot, who's ranked first in the state in Class 2A. He faced him in the title match, and Turry's able to hold his own. Losing in a 6-1 decision to Margot is honestly a really, really good effort in that match. So just really excellent wrestling. And also from West Scranton, good for Mark Redman getting a 5th place finish at that tournament, leading West Scranton to a 13th place finish out of 57 teams. That's an excellent effort from them. Also, again, we've mentioned them, Sam and Matt Almedina, they placed 4th and 5th at this tournament. So absolute top tier, our top wrestlers performing big time in a top tier tournament. So congratulations to them. We also had, for Wallenpaupack, they wrestled at the Great Valley Duels, and Wallenpaupack ends up going up against Faith Christian Academy, who is ranked first in the state in Class 2A as a team. The Buckhorns, they lose that title match big, but I mean, again, valuable experience against really top tier talent. Conan Kyer ends up surpasses his 100th career win. So congratulations to him out of Wallenpaupack. And At the Southern Tier Memorial Tournament, Lackawanna Trail's Demetrius Douglas went 5-1 with 4 pins and a decision to place third. Also had on the girls' side out of Lackawanna Trail, Peyton Latos went 3-1, including 2 pins and a technical fall to place 7th. So pretty good tournament weekend, Joby. But what I want to also touch on is when it comes to the league, I ended up at the Abington Heights West Scranton match, and I'm glad I did. Abington Heights comes up with kind of a minor upset here over a very good West Scranton team. Again, I've talked about it. Division I in wrestling is absolutely excellent. The depth is great. So this ends up being a battle. Abington gets big time contributions. Obviously, Joby, going into these matches, you've got, we've mentioned Michael Turry and we mentioned Brian Hurd and also on Abington Heights, Mason Whitney. And we mentioned Mark Redmond for West Scranton, Connor Legier for West Scranton. These are the guys that, they're going to win and they're going to have big point wins. But so in these dual meets, you have to win those, toss up matches. You have to try to not get pinned when you're going up against, your Michael Turries and, your Brian Hurds. You have to try to get points wherever you can. And Abington Heights wrestled excellent. They got contributions from certain people. You got your Aiden Kane, getting a big win at 189, in a match that ends up in a 5-4 decision. Frank Scalpi, who's had a very solid season so far for Abington Heights, wrestling behind obviously a phenomenal wrestler that went through Abington Heights and Caleb Marzolino, and now he gets his chance and he's making the most of it. He gets a pin, and then Connor Beck puts the match away for Abington Heights with a 5-2 decision. Beck had just returned from injury. He had wrestled last weekend at the Parkland Winter Duels, getting 3 wins, but he was just returning, and what a big moment for a senior. I was very happy for him to see that he was able to secure the match there was one bout after it, but he got it done, so he didn't have to put pressure on the next Abington Heights wrestler. And that's a big time win for Abington Heights. Sets up a matchup this week that I'll talk about in a minute. But I also want to talk about some other things in Division II. First of all, kudos to North Pocono and Matt Mapes and the coaching staff up there. North Pocono is really, they're really improving. Obviously, they returned to the mat with a varsity program maybe 5-ish years ago, had to struggle with, the COVID season and weren't able to wrestle. But, they end up in a battle with Valley View. What I want to get at is kudos to both teams. North Pocono really improving, Valley View improving. Valley View now 2-0 with a 37 and 33 victory over North Pocono. 2-0 in Division II. Obviously in Division II, Honesdale is, as we had talked about in Scranton Prep and Girls, Honesdale's head and shoulders over the other Division II opponents. So I'm not saying that, Valley View is gonna beat Honesdale or anything, but they are improving, and it's great to see, kudos to Brian Smith and that coaching staff at Valley View as well. But Joby, that's, it is another big week of wrestling, a lot of fun.
Yeah. And Joe, listen, you need to give yourself a little bit of credit, or you're really into this year. And if you are a big wrestling fan and you haven't had the opportunity to follow my good friend Joe here through various social media avenues, please do. He does a great job of giving you the video clips from the events that he covers, and That's no easy task, and he's really doing all he can to promote these kids. And you should be, Joe. This is a terrific group of athletes here who have really sacrificed a lot, and clearly they are among the best in the state. So great job and a great weekend for all of our athletes on the mats.
Yes, thank you, Joby. I appreciate that. And
yeah, check out the Instagram page, especially.
Please do. Me and Joby, we're getting a lot of stuff. Joby, I'm always impressed by your basketball highlight video. I feel like wrestling's one thing. I would find it kind of hard to, keep track of the game as you're trying to, get some highlights. So it's some good stuff.
Well, Joe, I am a multimedia person, so
you know it. You know it. So yeah, absolutely. Visit our Times-Tribune Sports Instagram page. Visit Joby's page on Facebook, Joby Fawcett, the Times-Tribune. We've got everything that we do there ends up on Joby's page and at the Times-Tribune Sports Facebook page as well. Also highlights, like you said, on the Times-Tribune Sports Instagram page. I just want to touch on really quickly, Joby, on the week ahead for wrestling. As I mentioned, Abington Heights moves to 2-0 in Division I and puts themselves in contention for the Division I title. Now, they have to beat Wallenpaupack, which is no easy task. Wallenpaupack is really in the driver's seat. If Abington Heights goes, is able to get that victory over Paupack, it would be absolutely massive. You've got to favor Wallenpaupack going into that match, but I thought West Scranton was going to beat Abington Heights last weekend. As you say, Joby, that's why they wrestle.
That's why they take scores, Joe.
That's why they take scores. So I'll be there at that one. I'm very excited for it. We'll see. Again, Paupack's going to be tough to beat, but I think that this Abington team is showing a lot more than I thought they would in really, seemed like it might have been a rebuilding year, but they're kind of reloading this year. So we also have right now, we've got Valley View and Honesdale both 2-0 in Division II. They will not be facing each other this week. Honesdale's at Trail. Western Wayne is at Valley View. So, and also in Division III, Blue Ridge is 2-0 and Scranton Prep is 1-0. So they're on top of Division III. I don't know if I mentioned the records in Division I, but again, Abington Heights, Wallenpaupack, both 2-0 going into their clash. So this should be another fun Wednesday night.
I'm glad you're going to be very busy this.
You know it, Joby. You know it. So, Joby, if there's nothing else you want to get to high school wise.
No, Joe, I think I have an idea what you want to dip your toe in the water with next. But yes, no, I'm good for the high school. It was a very busy weekend for us. We had a lot of things going on, you and I,
right,
going all the way back to Wednesday of last week. And so now we're kind of we're at mid-season too, so we're trying to get juggle a lot of things going on at the same time here, but we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely. Joby, I really want to start with, because I don't want to forget to ask you, you played football, you know football better than I do. I never played it. I'm a big time Michigan fan. So
Mm-hmm.
I want Ohio State to lose at all costs, all the time. So
yes.
Texas has the ball on the 1 and it's 2nd and goal. Why and it's not just Texas. Why do teams do this where, they need a yard, they go in shotgun and then they run sideways? So in that game, they end up losing 7 yards. Now they need to pass, how that ends. Jack Sawyer ends up, strip sack, return for a touchdown. Can you possibly explain to me why, am I missing something? Why teams always love to run wide when they need a yard?
I don't know the answer to that question, Joe, as a former player or a coach. Clearly in high school, it's a little bit different philosophy. Sometimes you get the fastest guy on the field out on the edge. It's very difficult to contain him.
Right.
In college, it's a little bit different. Everybody's fast.
Right.
The one thing that really disturbs me more about where the college game has gone, and I'm starting to see it leak into the NFL as well, because you may have picked up on this last night, Joe, when you were, kind of commiserating with yourself after the Packers loss. Teams can't go under center anymore in short yard situations.
Right.
And that's just because quarterbacks, the way the game is now, have been trained and practiced only out of the shotgun. They're not comfortable taking a snap under center, and no coach wants to put the quarterback in a situation, quarterback center exchange, where it's in a situation where a nose tackle is the immediate contact point, and you're not really repping out that center quarterback exchange. And so that's my only logical explanation I can give to that, because I really truthfully believe you have to, if you're from the 1 yard, 2 yard line or 1 yard line, you have to do your best to hammer that ball in,
right,
and trust your linemen. I get it. There's 10 guys within 2 yards of the football, and that the odds are extremely difficult, but the more you pound the ball into the line, I think the better chance you have of scoring a touchdown in that situation. But yeah, it's frustrating as a former player, and certainly frustrating as a pseudo high school coach to see you can't go under center anymore.
Exactly. Joby, you would have rammed that in back in the day. You just would have got or jumped over the top or something. I don't know.
You would have tried to. I personally would have tried to score the touchdown in between the tackles. But that, again, it's a different era. It's a different era of football. There's no question about that. Now, Joe, that being said, I don't know if you had a chance to kind of comfort Sam Freeman.
I try. Yeah,
after the Penn State loss. But, man, what a difficult night that was Thursday night for Penn State fans in northeastern Pennsylvania, because, boy, by all accounts early on in that game, I watched some of it firsthand, Penn State had that game in control, and then the bottom just fell out a little bit there in the second half. And momentum's a strange thing in football, Joe. The talent, there's such a narrow gap between the two teams talent-wise that you really have to be mindful of the momentum swings and how the pendulum, when it goes into one team's favor.
Right.
And I think I'm going to say something that's going to be a little bit surprising, I think, coming from me, in that, it doesn't solely fall on the shoulders of James Franklin. I think in that setting, most coaches with 40-plus seconds on the clock and a pretty reliable quarterback at the position against a team that just kind of had a euphoric score to tie the game, you kind of try to want to catch them and not with their emotions in check. I would, Tom Brady's done it. The best quarterbacks in the world have done it and done these kind of like 2-minute offensive scenarios. But Drew Aller just threw an ill-advised pass against his body. And Joe, we forget these are human beings. These are not robots. This is not a game of Madden. And you're just off a tick, and your timing of the throw, or even in defense of the two defensive backs for Penn State, they both fell down on the time touchdown. This game is played by human beings, and sometimes the better player or the more gifted player makes a better move, or just runs a crisper pattern, or throws a better ball, and that's why they play the game, Joe. This is not done on paper.
That's it. Like you said, I guess I'll say a few things. We've mentioned on this podcast, we don't like to go at, these kids they're college kids. It's not something you want to.
Well, they're semi-professional now.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. Drew Aller played a very bad game. He missed throws. And like you said, he makes that ill-advised pass at the end. But, I think you also have to look at, let's look at more what you had actually said, I think of a few episodes ago. What a great job by Marcus Freeman with this Notre Dame team. That team was, I don't want to say dead in the water, but Penn State controlled that entire first half. I mean, first of all, that game's got to be more than 10-3 going into the half if you're Penn State. But, this is a Notre Dame coaching staff that made adjustments, came out and tied the game immediately at 10. And those kids, those kids played for him. And he seems to have a great culture there. We spoke earlier about injuries. Notre Dame, it just felt like their offensive line was dropping like flies. And, but they stuck together and gutted out that victory. And I think it speaks to the culture there, because Riley Leonard, not a great game either, but he was a gamer, and that team willed itself to victory. And I think that's a credit to the coaching staff and the players and the culture there. And unfortunately for big game James, he's now one in, whatever in these big games.
Yeah, Joe, I do want to say congratulations and good luck to Rocco Spindler, whose father, Mark Spindler, West Scranton, University of Pittsburgh, played in the NFL. You had a chance to talk to him last week and leading up to that game. Now, Notre Dame plays Ohio State Monday, Joe.
Yeah. Yep. Monday
and
night.
I know who you're rooting for, not necessarily rooting for, but you're going to be picking Notre Dame in that one.
You know it. Exactly.
Unfortunately, Joe, I've got to believe that Ohio State's going to win that football game, and it's going to lead to the avalanche of criticism of what the actual college football playoff is. And listen, if the team that lost to hapless Michigan in the regular season can win the national championship, then I think we've got this thing going in a very strange direction.
You're not kidding, Joby. I will say, with every Ohio State victory, I'm just like, how did this team lose to Michigan? I don't know.
You're going to find out now that there is a playoff format. The regular season is going to look an awful lot like the NFL regular season, where, Detroit, they're 15-2. Don't forget, they're not 17-0.
Right.
The Eagles are 14-3 or whatever. They're not 17-0.
Right.
Those days may be long gone. We're not going to see that.
Right.
The teams are not necessarily going to take losses as badly as though they used to look back in the old days of college football. Now that there's a 12-team playoff. So should be a good one, though, for the national championship.
It's funny, Joby. I know we're coming up on an hour here, but I was talking to a Notre Dame fan after Ohio State, and he was just like, this is your guys' fault. I'm just like, Michigan's fault? What is it's just like, no, they're all charged up now, and they're on this like crusade. It's just like, and you did this, you guys did this because you beat them. And I'm just like, I don't know.
And don't forget too, Joe, if Notre Dame wins the national championship, it lost to Northern Illinois.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone was joking. It's just like, we should, they should send Sharon Moore into the, onto Notre Dame sideline. Maybe it's the same. It's just, get to Ohio State, you get like someone from the MAC, stand on the other sideline just to put some scare into them. So yeah, it should be a good game. It's hard to believe right now that Ohio State can lose this game, but they certainly can, Joby.
That's why they play the games, Joe.
Why they play the games. So, but Joby, I think that about covers it. Probably by the time people listen to this podcast, they will know whether the Rams or the Vikings won the game tonight. But I wish you good luck, my friend.
Thank you, my friend.
I will be rooting for the Rams, obviously. But other than that, just I quickly want to thank and plug some things. Again, thank you to Hannah Howell for joining us for an interview to start the episode. Be sure to follow along on our Twitter on our X page, at SportsTT. Follow our Instagram page, Times-Tribune Sports. Follow our Facebook page, Times-Tribune Sports. Follow Joby's Facebook page, Joby the Times-Tribune. Go to our website, thetimes-tribune.com/sports. There's a ton of sports going on, and we're on top of it. So please follow.